Hello, everybody. I hope everyone is doing all right. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, when or wherever you may be. Now, today let's talk a bit about the area in the world where all of these problems have been happening, and let's take in a bit of history. Uh, if you don't like history, well, don't watch this video because I'm going to talk a bit about it. But I think it's important for us to know what we are discussing when we are talking about the Middle East, when we are talking about Israel, when we are talking about Egypt, Iran, and all of that. It's important to have a bit of a historic perspective in order for us to understand why things happen as they happen, why you will find people in certain areas, why those people went there, what happened to the people that were there before. This is very important, okay? Because we have to understand how things process. And we also have to understand another thing that is very hard for us to understand because uh, we are guided by a sense of self preservation. Something that is change is always inevitable. Everything changes. No matter what you do, no matter what you say, no matter what you wish for, change is always inevitable. Key factor here is how do you deal with it? How do you face it? And how do you adapt ultimately? Okay. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you to the map, and we are going to start talking. Okay. I zoomed out. As you can see, this is what we call the Middle East, or the Fertile Crescent, which was this area right here. So if you, I think you can see my pointer. This is the Middle East. Okay, you have Syria, you have Turkey here, or Anatolia if you want to be more precise. You have Lebanon, you have Israel, you have Jordan, you have Egypt, you have the Arabic Peninsula. This is Iraq, which is the central area of this so-called Middle East. Okay, you have the Iranian plateau right here, which is basically an island or a plateau island, a desertic plateau or island surrounded by hills in all sides. The main change of hills here and mountains are the Zagros, which are these ones. They run from the northern area near this northern area, sorry, near the Caucasus. So you have the Caucasus here, which is, as you know, very hilly, filled with mountains. It's a natural barrier. And then it prolongs here. This area here is also hills and mountains. And then it crisscrosses north of Iraq. Iraq in the area of Kurdistan especially. This hilly part is still the Zagros, and they go all the way here, and they end up some here near the general area known as Hindustan, which encompasses Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. Okay, down here you have the famous Hormuz Straits. The north part is Iran, the south part are the states of the Gulf. You have the United Arab Emirates, you have Saudi Arabia, you have Bahrain here, you have Oman, you have Kuwait, and you have Iraq. Okay, now we are located. Now let's go to what people call the Holy Land. All right, here we go. This is the Holy Land. This is the Dead Sea. This area here is the Eastern Mediterranean. This is Cyprus, that gets its name from Cyprus, which was the old name the Greeks called Tin, and which was a very important center of trade, and it served as a kind of so let's imagine this as the base from which the trade between this area here from Greece and before Greece from the Minoan here in Crete to here, and then this served as a kind of a trade center with the Phoenician cities here, which is today Lebanon and parts of Syria, all the way to the borders of Turkey, okay, and also Egypt. So basically, this would serve as a way to organize trade with the North. Okay, things as different as, for example, uh, Embar that came from the Baltic region, especially. It would travel in the entirety of Europe, creating ancient trade routes that today are roads. Many of our roads derive from this area, and then of course you have the Roman Empire that built roads, but it started like this. It came all over here, down here, and then you would have trade here. And through here, you would have the ancient Silk Road, where you would have transportation of goods from China all the way to Europe, and from Europe all the way to China. This would also include India. You also have trading that began with the Greek states, and before that with Egypt, and with the other empires that existed here in the Gulf region, where sometimes some things came from China to India, from India all the way to Iran, or by sea directly from India. We know for a fact that the Romans traded with India using mainly maritime routes, and also via the trade caravans that came all over here to this area, more or less, where the ancient city of Palmyra existed. Okay, it's a if you have the opportunity to do that, study the history of the city of Palmyra. It's very interesting. Okay, now let's continue. So this is the area in question, the area that the Hebrew, in this case the Israeli people, consider their own. So let's go back a couple of millenniums and let's forget a bit about the entire mythology behind the Hebrew faith, behind the Hebrew so called race that doesn't exist, in my opinion, and in the opinion of Jewish scholars too. They admit, just like I admit, that there is a unique culture. Yes, of course it is. I have absolutely no doubt. And it's a very rich culture with very interesting things, I would say. At least me, I find it very interesting. But from going there to mythologic ascendancy, that's a bit weird, in my opinion. But it's a normal thing, okay? The Portuguese, our ancestors, the Lusitani, which was a Celtic tribe, they claim to be the descendant of the god Búzios, which was a god from the sea that had brought us to the land where we were living from across the sea. Okay, so every country in this world has some kind of of a mythological origin. Sometimes it transforms to culture, sometimes it transforms into religion. In this case, it transformed into a religion that also helped to ensure that the tribes stayed more or less united or protected when it was in the middle of other cultures that were much more numerous than the Hebrews. In this case, we have to say Hebrews because that is the correct term. That were more numerous than the Hebrews, and rules such as, for example, you have to have a Jewish mother in order to be considered a Jew, which means that this would ensure that even the child that came from rapes or from other unsolicited, sexual intercourse would also be integrated into the greater tribe if their mother was Jewish. Okay, it's an interesting way of considering things and a rather intelligent one to do, in my opinion. Now, let's continue. So, you had this area. We have to go back in time to the later Bronze Age, and we are going to see a situation here that happened that was this. You had tribes that live in the desert around here, and they were constantly marching in and out from this entire area. That the function of the desert and of the cities, the trading cities, and all of that here in the coast, they were constantly cycling in this area, and occasionally they would invade the richer areas here where you had civilizations. You had civilization. Let me just look here at my little book. No, that civilization appeared around 450 to 350 before Christ. Then you have the some so you, it really started as the lands here dried out and people started to live in the rivers, and like in Egypt. Before we go back here to the tribes, but just that you understand, the Hebrews were just another tribe that lived in this area of desert. Okay, this is what you have to take from this first part of my explanation. Now, here in the Middle East, in the area where today is Iraq, and the two rivers, the Tiger and the Euphrates, uh, this area here used to be sea. And then gradually it started to dry out. And it left the rivers and a very rich valley that was fertilized by the passing of the rivers to the sea. And that land was very adequate for farming. So people started to install here, just like they started to install right here in Egypt, okay, in the valley of the rivers of the Nile, and they started to install here. Then they started to produce food, and you needed some organization and also some technical capabilities in order to survive. So they develop things like rudimentary writing and mathematics and all of that in order to predict the flooding of the rivers, in order to know when it was adequate to farm a certain product, farming product. You also needed someone to organize everything. You need someone to be in charge, or someone took charge. So you go from villages to state cities, basically. Okay. You also needed to protect yourselves because there was the constant threat of the barbarians that lived in the hills. They were even were known as the hill people, and the constant harassment from the tribes that lived in the Iranian plateau that came all the way from the north. Okay, you had the Cimmerians in the Scythian that used to live in this area right here. Yes, the Cimmerians, Conan, it's a real name, it's a real tribe, and from also from here, from Turkey, and all of these tribes that live here, they saw rich cities down here, and they would occasionally come down to pillage. You also had tribes right here in the Arabian Peninsula that used to come up and also try to pillage the cities. So this forced these areas here to civilize. Okay, civilization, it was a need. It was not some kind of divine goal or whatever people want to consider it. It was a simple case of need. You had to feed people, you had to protect people, and you had to rule people. Simple as this. It's social organization, and if you want to, I'm just making a very succinct explanation. you should dig in a bit more into it because it's also a very interesting topic. Now, here you had several tribes. First, you had the Sumerians that installed and created cities, and then you have what we would call the Semitic people, which because it's not only the Hebrews that are Semitic, a lot of tribes and a lot of ethnic groups are Semitic, and they are basically white people that are not Caucasian from this area. Apparently, we were part of the wave of the so-called Indo-Europeans, okay, or Indo-Asians, whatever you want to call it, and apparently the origins of what is today the Europeans and the Iranians and all of that, we came from somewhere around here during the last glaciation, whatever. Some of us went as far as India, others went to the east, and others came to the Caucasus, to Armenia, to Turkey, to all of this area, to the Black Sea. Others came down into Europe and into Northern Europe. People were already living here, of course. They mixed in. Later on, with the Celts, they came all the way to Portugal. From Portugal to the Balkans, into Germany and whatever. Then you have the Slavs, which were basically the same people that also here. So we are all interconnected, just for you to understand. But there is these people here, which are us Europeans, and the so-called Semitic people. Despite what people say, we are basically it's just a way of culturally defining an area where a group of people, a human group, has come from. So you would have these tribes that lived all over in this area. Then you had the cities here that started to flourish with the trade of the Phoenicians and of the. You have also, of course, you have Egypt, which is very ancient. You had the Minoan civilization right here in Crete, that was later succeeded by the Mycenae, which were the ancestors of the Greeks when Greece was invaded by the another invasion of the Indo-Europeans, just like Italy was also invaded. And even that term invaded, it's a bit vague because we really don't know what happened. There are places where you have where you have physical evidences that there was some kind of violent takeover. In other areas, they seem to just arrive and adapt to the life of the people that existed there. That is why you have the juxtaposition of earth-like, maternal, feminine, if you want to call them like that, deities like the great mothers and all of that, and then you have the solar gods like the Greek gods. So more and more experts are convinced that what probably happened was uh, it was not. You cannot call it a peaceful invasion because that invasion is always violent. But in most cases, they just arrive, they adapt, and in a couple of centuries, the culture was so mixed, and it was all so amalgamated into a new type of culture that we really cannot know what really happened. And you also have to add to that writing only came much later, so you have to rely on spoken myths and physical evidences, and that is not very, I don't know, it's not easy to reach a truth. Okay, you can only speculate, but let's continue. So you had this situation where you had civilization centers here. Here in Iran, you had one that rose, sorry, in this area, which was called Elam. I don't know if that is the term used in English, but in Portuguese it's Elam, that existed here, and the Elamites, and they stood between this area here. They stood between two very important civilization areas. You had the Middle East here with Sumer, later with the empire of Akkad, which came to occupy everything from Iran to the Middle East to the all this area of Syria and even up to Turkey or Anatolia and Egypt. But that empire later collapsed. It was just the first, the Empire of Akkad, and you had this area, a transition area, where you had the tribes that were mainly horse riders with bows, meaning these were nomadic people that lived in this plateau. That is, like I told you in the beginning of the video, it is just an island, a desertic plateau in the middle of a sea, so to speak, a sea of mountains. So rather isolated, and you had also the cultures of the Innu of Mohenjo-daro that existed here and that were destroyed. We still don't know why. A couple of thousands of years ago. Anyhow, civilization did not die here, of course. When Alexander arrived here, he found kingdoms. He founded kingdoms in the northern part of India. That also that in, but that's rushing a bit. So let's continue. So you had this situation where you had civilization centers here in Egypt and in the Middle East that extended all the way to this area of the Eastern Mediterranean and Cyprus, and you also already had the Greek cities. You have as I said, you have the Minoans first, then you have the Mycenae, but and you had these tribes that just wander around here. You have one of those tribes that, for whatever reason, either they were taken captive or they voluntarily immigrated to the area of the Egyptian empire, and here they retained their identity, their cultural identity, and they took in a lot of the religious aspects of Egypt. One of those aspects was the religious, so to speak, the religious crisis with Emperor Akhenaton, which preached the existence of one God only. Sounds familiar, right? Uh, one God only that he identified with the sun. That belief was later completely rebuked by the priests of Ammon, and multi gods returned to Egypt. So it was a brief thing, but nonetheless, you had those tribes that live here. Then those tribes, led by a mythical figure, which is probably the amalgamation of many leaders, called Moses, they marched to the east. They crossed this deserted area and they arrived at this area where people were already living, because we had ancient cities all over this area, because this was an area with some civilization. For whatever reasons, they conquered this area, they installed here, and they founded kingdoms. In this case, a kingdom of Israel. Now, then you have the entire fight with the descendants of the sea people, which were another wave of invaders that apparently came from somewhere in the Balkans. Apparently, no one is really sure. They came down here. They destroyed the Hittite Empire, which had rose. In the meantime, had rose here, and they tried to attack Egypt. They got rebuked, and they installed themselves here in this area. But for whatever reasons, the Israelites lived with them, so to speak, and with the Phoenicians and with all of that, and they installed themselves here. Okay, this is how Israel started. No mythical origins, nothing like that. Just a tribe of desert nomads and shepherds that either infiltrated peacefully, I don't know, but by their stories they talk about mythical battles and combats in the Bible and all of that, but we really don't know. Okay, this might have just been minor scuffles. They might just made some cities. Okay, you can consider that Sodom and Gomorrah are are remnants of those stories of conquest, just like Jericho and all of that, the walls of Jericho. We all know it, at least here from Bible school. For whatever reasons, these people installed here and they created a small kingdom. And it was a small kingdom that was not that important. I'm sorry to say. I don't know. I don't want people to think that they were that important. They were just another they were just what the Egyptians would call another Syrian princedom amongst many. You had the Phoenicians in the north that were never a united kingdom. Okay, there were several cities. The most important were Tyrus, Sidon, and Beirut, which would correspond to Byblos in the ancient time, but they was the same. These cities in the Phoenicia they would work for the empire that paid them, so to speak, uh, in the moment. So you would find the Phoenicians working for the Egyptians. Later on, from one of their colonies right here in what is today Tunis, in this area, in the city of Carthage, okay, they became the great opponents of the Romans in the north. They also founded some cities here in Spain, like today Cadiz, and but that's for another story. But you had this little kingdom here that was more or less independent. And then you had the great empires that dictated the story of this area and of the known world. You had Egypt, you have the Hittites here, and then you had the Middle East. Here in the Middle East, in the north, you also had the warring princes of Assyria, and in the south, you had what would be Babylon. These are you if you want to go and look into their history, see exactly when each of these kingdoms formed. But basically, you had the Assyrians here. The Assyrians conquered all of this. Okay, they conquered the entire Middle East. They went as far as the borders of Armenia here in the north. They also conquered the area here of the Hittite Empire. They conquered the entire area of the coast. They conquered Israel, and they even conquered Egypt for a while. Okay, this is the Hittite Empire. Uh, and the Assyrians they had a very interesting way of dealing with areas, with kingdoms or whatever people that they conquered. So when they arrived here at Israel, they took the entire population of half of the country and they sent it to Babylon and they installed other people here. So this, I don't know how you say it in English, Samaritans, it's how we call them, started to live here, meaning non-Israeli or non-Hebrew, to be more concise, and you had the Hebrews up here. Then the situation went on, and at the moment, the Assyrians, their empire fell violently when a coalition composed of the Babylons, of the Babylonian rebels, and of a force that had emerged here in Iran in the meantime, the Medium, and also of Egypt, okay, and they ended the Assyrian Empire and then they divided their lands amongst themselves. But before we go into that, let's talk about the Medians. As I told you, the tribes that lived here, they were tribes of nomads that traveled from north to south this region which is the steep that goes all the way to China, and where people would constantly move. And you cannot call them Asian, you cannot call them Europeans. We don't even know. What we do know is that the ones that were here were white, because the definition of white is also very vague, at least in my opinion. But let's continue. These people that live here until up to the borders of Afghanistan and in the Iranian plateau, they were all similar, meaning they had a similar culture, a similar language, and you had the Persians in the south that were the Parsis, that were the relatives of the northern tribe of the Medium, which was very strong. And when this history happened, when they ended the Assyrian Empire, the dominant strength for the dominant tribe were the Medians. Okay, they occupied this entire area of what is today Iran. The Babylonians occupied all of the possessions of the Assyrians here in the Middle East, and these guys right here, the Medians, they reached as far as Turkey and all of this area. So you had this empire up here in the north, and you had Babylon. Babylon, which was also rising in power, they started to plot against the Medium. And what did they do? They tried to prop up the tribe of the Persians that was a client state of the Medium. Even if they were related to, this was their situation. And then you have the Achaemenids. I don't know if that's the correct term in English. This tribe rose up. They successfully conquered their former masters, and they founded, created another another federal. How can I explain to this? What you had here was a federation of tribes, meaning people that shared culture, that shared bloodlines, that shared a common origin, and all of that. So basically, what happened was the Persians supplanted the Medians as the dominant power, and they called themselves Persians, just to be completely honest. And then you had the rise of Cyrus right here in Persia. Cyrus, who was a very intelligent man that preferred to rule, to be seen as a liberator more than a conqueror. So he would keep the local authorities ruling just in his name. And he did things to appease the people. And one of the things that he did is he allowed the Hebrews that lived in exile, so to speak. That word is a bit strong, but they were forced to live in Babylon. They allowed them to go back to the land where they had came from, and they came here. And with more or less hiccups, they all mingled back into this area of the Syrian principates, in which the Hebrews were a cultural unity and a political unity, even if with relations of dependency with Persia. And the empire of the Persians progressed. Okay, you cannot give too much importance to little kingdoms. I'm sorry. It's important for the little kingdoms, but it's not important for history at large. You had the Persians, the entire history. Okay, they dominated everything to the from let's this was the center part of the Persian Empire. They dominated parts of India. They dominated the entire area of the entire peninsula of Turkey. They defeated King Croesus here in that had a kingdom here. And they were more or less Greek culture, so to speak. We know the classic war against Greece. They occupied Thrace, which was an area here in the north. Then they occupied also Egypt for a period, and then you have Alexander. Now Alexander, he pops up somewhere here near. He occupies this entire region, including Israel and all of that. He occupies the entire Persian army. Then he was a drunk. He dies with a fever, probably some disease that he contracted in the east, some tropical disease. He dies. Then his empire is divided between Seleucus, which created a great empire. Later on, he lost the east, that became Bactra, right here. Okay, and you had Ptolemy Egypt of Cleopatra and all of that crap. Basically, we arrive at the modern, so to speak, modern times. Not modern, of course. And you have the Roman Empire. And before that, you had already the Greeks dominating for centuries Israel, and the religion and the philosophy of the people that live here and their bloodlines, of course, they become mingled with and vice versa. Let's not forget this, with the ideas of the Greeks and the logic of the Greeks, and this further helped them to hone, or how can I say this, perfect their culture and their religion. Then you have the entire crisis with Jesus that comes and says that the religion was not just of the Hebrews; it was to be given to the entire world. Take it as you want. And the Israelites, because their religion was the glue that kept them together, they refused to accept it, and they killed him, or the Romans killed him, whatever you want to say, and that is all. Then comes change with the Roman Empire. People that were of the Jewish faith, they expanded. They were here in Babylon and all of this area. They expanded a lot to Greece, to Italy, also here in the Iberian Peninsula, in North Africa, whatever. And little by little, what happened? First, the people that were in this area, and you can go and see the history and see how this happened, because a lot of things happened that created this situation. Little by little, the people that remained in this area, meaning the Hebrews, mixed with other races, okay, no one arrived here and pushed them out. In some cases, they were expelled. Yes, they were, because it benefited whoever invaded them. They grabbed them and they sent them somewhere. Yes, that is true. No doubts about it. It happened to each and every one of us that exist in this world today. We have we have an ancestor that was raped, or that was a rapist, or that was killed, or that was the killer. That is absolutely normal. The people that were here, the ancestors of the Palestinians that were Hebrews here, but they were called Palestinians because they lived in Palestine, which was the name of the region. Some of them became Christian, or most of them became Christian. Some of them remained Jewish, and that is it. Then came the Muslims, and a lot of them became Muslims, and some remained Christian, and some remained Jewish. Meanwhile, those people with a unified culture that existed in other societies, they continue to profess their religion just like any other religion. Okay, so you had Jewish people right here in the area of Greece, in Italy, in the Iberian Peninsula. Later on, you have them in the Caucasus area. You have them in East Europe, continuously mixing, continuously acquiring other culture traits. that which today are a part of that rich culture of the Jewish people that I've spoken of. That's very rich and it's very interesting if you want to look into it. And that is it. And now you have the modern days, and we all know what happened. But let's go back. This started in the medieval period. The medieval period, when you had here the Portuguese Empire and the Spanish Empire, one of our kings married a hot Spanish queen. And the hot Spanish queen was also a zealot. And she told our king, if you want to get some booty, you got to get rid of all the Jews and all of the Muslims in your kingdom. And just to say this, in Portugal we were rather tolerant, meaning we really didn't care. The Jews and the Muslims, they were a small minority and they didn't bother us much. But the king wanted to get some booty, so he expelled them. A lot of those Jewish people that and remember they had already been expelled or forced converted in Spain, and then the same happens to them in Portugal. Some of them go to North Africa, and other ones go to the area of the Netherlands, where they later on would would fuck our empire over with the Dutch. An interesting story. And you continue to have Jewish people in the eastern parts and all of that. Then an Austrian painter becomes a dictator in Germany. He creates the entire situation of World War II, and then Zionists that lived in England, plus the Americans and the Allies, think about it, and they didn't want to take care of all of those Jewish people that had been removed from their homes and that had their livelihoods and even the houses where they live destroyed, and they decided to install them in an area controlled by the English in Israel. And 1946, that was it. This is how Israel was created. The people that were here, they were the descendants of the people that were always here. And you have people that have cultural ties and blood ties. I'm not denying it. I'm not denying it, of course. No, even if they are more dispersed in time, I'm not denying that these people might have the right to live here. Who am I to decide it? I'm not a geneticist. I have no idea. It's not up to me to say such a thing. But whatever happened, these people were installed here. And of course, immediately the the area around it, which had a completely different culture, reacted to it as a foreign object inserted into their culture. So they tried to destroy it. And of course, we know the entire rule and the entire rules of the countless wars that have happened, like the 6 Days Wars and all of that. When all of these countries, Arabic Muslim countries, united to destroy Israel and whatever you want to think about it, and it continues. Later on, we have a solution for this problem, which was a two state solution. Israel would keep the lands that it has occupied, even if illegally, and the Palestinians would stay with the lands where they live in peace. The two state situation didn't work. Why? Now, here comes the blame game. And the blame game is very easy, but I have to be logic, and I'm trying to be logic. I'm trying to not be biased, and I'm going to tell you this: the blame was not solely on Israeli Zionists; they just contributed to it. The blame was also in Hezbollah, that was fueled by the other. But I'm going to explain why. But I'm just going to say this first: that was also supported by Iran and by other countries in the Gulf region. Hezbollah continued to try and destabilize the region, and Israel also contributed to it by feeding the narrative of Israel of Hezbollah of what they were doing. Because if you had a bit of more calm on the part of Israel, this would not have had gone the way it went. But as everything in history, you have Benjamin Netanyahu, and Benjamin Netanyahu is a right-wing radical. Simple as this. But he's not the only one, okay? He is just the representative of a group inside of Israel that wants to create what they call a greater Israel that will include all of these lands, the Sinai Peninsula, Israel, the entirety of Palestine, Lebanon, up to the border of Syria, and Jordan and all of this for some kind of mythical empire that they think that existed with King Solomon or some shit like that. But that never happened, okay? Because you have to be honest and say things as they were. Israel was just an insignificant princedom right here, where the people out of protection, out of protecting themselves, out of retaining their own culture, uh, make it different from the culture of the states around them. They created their own culture, unity, and their own religion. Okay, this is the origins of Judaism. This is the origins of Christianity, and these are the origins of Muslims. Okay, the three Abrahamic religions from the patriarch Abraham. Okay, this is the origin. It's culture. Cultures are what moves, are what moves humanity, so to speak. But now let's get back here to Iran. Iran in the the 20th century, they kicked out the Shah and they became a republic. And when they became a republic, the republic decided that the resources of the country of Iran should be run by the Iranians, meaning their oil. And a country in Europe, and I'm going to have to say this, sorry, my British friends, a country in Europe called the United Kingdom had a lot of interests in Iranian oil, and so did American companies. So, what did they do? They stage a coup, or they help a coup to happen with to install the Shah, and they installed the Shah as the ruler of Iran. And the Western companies were able to continue to siphon the oil and make their little profits unabated. Now, what you have to understand right now is this. We all see, let me just focus back on me for a while. We all see those nice pictures of how Iran used to be before the Islamic Revolution, of the girls dressing up normally, going to the beach, whatever, a lot of culture and all of that. And that is true. Okay, no, there is no doubt. That is the truth. That existed, that type of freedom, all of that existed. But then we forget about what was happening in the background. What was happening to anyone that tried to go against the will of the Shah and of his supporters? What happened to those people? The people that were assassinated, the people that were thrown into jail, the people that, if they tried to speak out against the corruption of the Shah government, they would be ended. They would have to immigrate. They would have to go underground. We forget about the oppression that the Iranian people were under. And we forget of who was supporting them. United States of America, providing guns, providing financial support, providing intel, providing methods of torture and subjugation with the CIA. It was the United States, and this is true. Okay, this is documented in history. And look, I don't want you to take in this as a justification for example, what the Iranian government just did to the protesters. I don't want you to take this as a justification for some kind of revenge. Now the Iranians, they will be able to revenge of this or that. No. And I also don't want you to justify this as an excuse for what the Iranian government is. Because what happened was this: in times of need, people did what people do. They grabbed on to things that they know. They grabbed on to religion, to the peace that religion brings. To have someone that tells you, just like the Americans are doing now with Trump, the same type of zealotry. They don't like to listen to this, but oh well, too bad. To me, they are the same as the as the lunatics in Afghanistan or the lunatics in Iran. They are all at the same level. To me, people grabbed onto religion, and came a person that represented a group of persons, Khomeini, and he said, "I have the solution. I will bring peace. I will bring justice. I will bring order to our country. Just go back to these basic and very repressive, pardon me, very repressive religious principles, cover up the ladies, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that, and I will give you peace and quiet." And the Cultural Revolution, and you have the Islamic Republic of Iran. After that moment, let me just go back to the map. When that happened, the United States and this actor here, that, remember, in this moment in time, they were not trying to get any kind of greater Israel or whatever. That right wing movement still did not have the grip that it has today. This actor, and also some countries here in the Gulf, let's not forget it, like Saudi Arabia, because the majority of these people here are Sunni, and the majority of the people in here are Shiite, two different types of Islam. Don't forget this. It's not just the United States that is the great Satan, like the Iran says. They started to do everything that they could to make life miserable for Iran. But this was just in the midst of the entire situation of the Cold War. Don't forget that later on you have the Soviet Union invading Afghanistan, which is right here. Who knows if they would not go, if they had been successful here, they would not advance to the south, and maybe the Americans, they had the Shah here, but then they did not have the Shah. They had a state that was hostile to them. Maybe they wanted to create some kind of proxy state right here or whatever, because you had the Gulf states, you had the oil, which was essential for the functioning of the world, as we all know, and as we all are still feeling, because it still is, unfortunately. For whatever reasons this happened, you had this. And then you have been having, since that moment, a constant battle between these people and these people. And the ones that live here, the Palestinians, these ones are supporting them. And they are here in Palestine, and they are here in Lebanon because they had to run, because they are the descendants of the people that were thrown out of their homes and out of their properties by the Jewish settlers and forced to relocate somewhere else. All right? This is the entire situation that we have here. There are there are no saints and there are no devils. There is just history, and there is just the lack of people in recognizing what went wrong, and also recognizing that you cannot base yourself in historical realities when you are talking about religion. Religion is not a bloody historic reality. Okay, the Bible, like a priest told me in Sunday school, the Bible is the way that God has to communicate with you. Like Jesus, it tells you stories to teach you some kind of morality. Like, for example, to not kill, to not steal, uh, that coveting the woman of your neighbor is a bad thing because that is only going to create problems. The importance of family. These are all very positive ideas. And why would they said, so to speak, in this way? Because we are talking about people that a majority of them didn't know how to read and write. Usually, only the priests and the scribes knew how to read and write. Sometimes, not even the rulers knew how to read and write. This is why, when you see historians talk about a determined king or emperor that was a very learned person, they are always very, very surprised and all that, because it's not the norm. Okay, during the medieval period, it was normal for people to do not knowing how to read and write. Some of the greatest kings of the medieval period only knew how to write their names. They didn't know how to read, they didn't know how to write. That was something that was reserved to the priests, to the monks, to the people that worked in it. It's normal, okay? And you cannot, for example, now they are talking about the third temple and all of this shit. Look, this is no different from Adolf Hitler talking about the Lebensraum of having some kind of a mythical Aryan forefather, and that he needed to clean up the race in order to wake up the hidden abilities of the Aryan race. This is not different from that, okay? This religious zealotry, and I'm talking about the Muslims too. Okay, I have no fear on saying that because I'm not offending a religion. Okay, by talking logic, you are not offending because look, I have my religious convictions too. I have my set of beliefs too, and they are strong enough that I can talk about it and not be offended. Yours should be strong enough. And by saying this about Israel, this part of history that I was reporting, so to speak, this remember, please remember, this was a very uh, superficial analysis of everything. Okay, I did not went to the entirety of the historic events and all of that. Okay, it was just to serve as a way of explaining my reasoning. Okay, I'm not an anti-Semite by saying that what Israel is doing is wrong, and by saying that they are absolutely not right in doing it. Because right now they are doing the same shit in Lebanon. And who is paying the cost? The civilians in Lebanon and us at the gas pump. And look, I don't like Iran. I mean, the Iranian government. I don't like them, man. They are zealots just like the people in Israel and the people in the United States. Trump and all of those Bible bashers, there are a bunch of zealots. And I don't like zealots. I don't like people that put religion and feelings above logic. That is a nice way of getting extinct. A logic person would never push a button to send a nuclear weapon, but a religious or emotive person would. A logical person will consider it to be a useless act because you would be destroying what you wish to conquer or what you wish to defeat, and you could never take that. If, for example, if you send a nuclear missile against a city, you will never be able to take that city. You will never be able to use that city. It will be a radioactive desert that you will cannot use. And more than that, the radiation from that explosion will reach you. So there is no logic about it. But someone that says that they think that they are fulfilling the role that some god told them to do, they will do that without hesitation. You understand? This is why I don't like religious people. Just a minute, please. Just drinking some water. Pardon. So, as I was saying, this entire situation is perfectly avoidable because all you would have to do is the United States do something good for change and get these two actors together, tell Israel to stop expanding, force these actors to tell these actors that they are funding to stop attacking Israel with terrorist attacks, which, whatever justification you want to give them, I know they are justified, but they are just not logic. They do not serve a purpose. And to stop this entire situation. And to tell these people here that these bases are here to protect these people and tone it down. The United States could tone down the military bases that it has here. I'm not saying that they should not keep them as an exterior manifestation of power, but from what they are doing now, they are going to lose it. But that's another story. And just tell them to stop doing this. And what do you have? You have someone that is increasing the military, is trying to increase the military spending. They are bombing. They are trying. I think they are pushing for an invasion. Let me just focus back on me. They have fired the people that were telling them that this is not a good thing, that you should not invade Iran, that you should not do this. But they are going to. I don't know if they are not going to do it anyway, because financially the United States cannot support this war. Politically, it will be a disaster, and more than that, it's like destroying the little credibility that the United States has. And by saying this, I'm not giving any kind of reason or victory to Iran. That is not the point. This war was lost. The first missile that was fired against Iran, this war was lost. Just saying. It's a situation of Zugzwang, like we say in chess. Whatever move you make, you will always lose something. You can never win. Even if the United States invades and conquers parts of Iran or whatever, or sets up a puppet system, government, or whatever they do, it's always a situation of Zugzwang. You always will lose. Always. This is an unlawful war. Let's go back to the map here. Now we are going to talk about military subjects, so to speak. This is Iraq. Iraq invaded Kuwait. In Iraq, you had Saddam Hussein, which was a paid proxy of the United States that went rogue. They had him here fighting against Iran to favor Israel and their fight against Hezbollah and all of that. Very simple. And also to favor the other states in the Arabian Peninsula that are Sunni and that don't like, so to speak, the Shiites in Iran, and that want more dominance over the area. Okay, then the war ended unresolved. Okay, the borders remained the same. There was no conquest. There was nothing. Just a waste of time and money. And then this guy here he started to think that he didn't need the Americans, or more than that, he thought the Americans would support his actions. And what does he do? He invades Kuwait and creates the Gulf War. And then the Americans, with a coalition of I think 170 countries, invades this area with allies. Let's look at this area from a geographic point of view. Let's zoom in. Zoom in. You know what this is, right? Desert plains. A couple of hills here, but nothing major. Want to see Baghdad? Except from the or with the exception of the northern region, where the Kurds that had been attacked by Saddam were. This is Kurdistan. This is in Kurdistan area, Kirkuk. That was mountainous. This was basically a beachfront. So you see those pictures of Allied tanks crossing the desert and destroying whatever was left of Saddam's army because they had been under sanctions. They were heavily debilitated, and they did what they did in Iraq. And we have what we have of Iraq right now, which is a bloody mess, to be honest. Now, you are going to compare this to this. Look at the geography. There are three ways the United States can do this. From the east, they cannot come. Okay, you have Afghanistan, which is definitely not very supportive of the United States. You have Pakistan, which is trying to end this shit because it's beneficial to them too, because they don't want wars next to their borders. They don't want refugees pouring into their borders. They don't want anything of that, and it's reasonable for them to think. You have these guys that are still consolidating their power, but that are lunatics that want to wander around in their religious feast, whatever they want to do. I don't care. It's their life and their country. The people there have to deal with it. Then you have Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan here in the north that also don't want anything with war. You have Azerbaijan, which is friendly to the Americans. So the Americans have three ways of doing this. Either they come over the mountains via Kurdistan, they stage some kind of sea invasion here in the Gulf, or they try to come up here to the north where you have more mountains, very similar to the Alps in Europe. Let me see if we can see a couple of pictures here. Right, forest and snowy peaks, and after that, what you have? A bloody desert. This is what Iran is in the slopes of these mountains. If you come from this side, you have the same thing, mountains. You would have to haul supplies for your troops and advance constantly in enemy land, so to speak. In the south, you have the same bloody thing. You have the Zagros Mountains. You have bunkers. You have defensive positions because these people have been preparing for 40 years for an invasion of their country. This is a state in a continuous state of paranoia. And then this is Karg Island. the island that they want to invade. I want you to take a look at it. I am going to zoom down and we are going to see it together. Like this. Like this we can see. Mountains, you have the harbors, you know what this is? This is to store gas and oil. An enormous gas station with bunkers, with defensive positions, all sitting in a flammable surface, so to speak. Do you think the Iranians will not blow this thing entirely just to kill Americans? They are Shiite. You know what Shiites are? Shiites are martyrs. For them to die for religion or to die for country is an honor. Do you understand how hard it is to battle against people? And look, again, I'm not praising them. I'm just stating the facts. Do you know how hard it is to fight against people that think in this way? I mean, they want to invade this. And suppose that they invade and that they conquer this, they would have to conquer this little one to the north too. Look at what is waiting for them in the mainland. Mountains, bunkers, from where an endless wave of drones, of missiles, of fire would rain down to them continuously. This is what Trump wants to invade Americans. This, look at it. This is what they want your children to die for. It's not for God, it's for oil, it's for dominance, it's for influence. It's to create a situation where the opponent to these people doesn't exist. When all of this could be settled at the negotiating table. You just had to sit down these people, to tell them to leave the Palestinians alone. If they want to close the bloody border and never look at them again, let them do it. Even if I think it would be much beneficial for Israel to try and make some connections with the Palestinians and with the Jordans and with the Egyptians and with the people that are surrounding them and try to integrate in the area by doing such simple things as, for example, we know in the situation that Syria is, so why not send doctors? Why not send people to help them? Why not send people to Lebanon? Why not send doctors and all of that instead of sending soldiers? Why not curb down the settler movement here? Why? Because it's a political party. Because the extreme right is what's keeping Benjamin Netanyahu in power. They want power. They want to keep themselves out of jail. But this, you have to look at things, okay? You cannot look at, oh, they are going to occupy that little island and everything will be all right. No, this is a place. It exists. It has substance. And the Iranians would prefer to destroy this, either that from giving it to the Americans. And people are going to die for this. People are already dying. And meanwhile, the bombing continues. Meanwhile, people continue to die here. Meanwhile, and I'm going to say this too, I know some people are not going to like me to say this. Meanwhile, people continue to die here too. I also care about the people that are dying here and here, because right now our little the IDF is going up here, up to the river, okay, and they are going to try. They are near here, near the tire, the near tire. They want to occupy everything to a river that is here that I'm not seeing right now, okay, to set up some kind of so-called security region. Are you kidding me? And meanwhile, let's go back. Let's go here because this is also important. Meanwhile, people in this island are dying without power, without food, and without medicine. Because that ship, that cargo of that oil tanker with Russian oil that arrived here, it's going to perhaps give them energy for a couple of days or weeks, whatever. And people forget about this. A cargo ship with Chinese rice also arrived here with supplies, all under the nose of the United States. And instead of being worried about this, instead of solving this situation by simple diplomacy, by sending diplomats into this island, by negotiating conditions to end, and I know, and I know this country is also ruled by lunatics. I know that. I know who Fidel Castro was. I know who that is in power right now is. But instead of negotiating some kind of agreement with these people, no, you are going to disrupt the entire situation here in oil and all of that that was working and causing wars here and affecting the entire world, our world, completely affected by this shit. Why? Because some people don't know how to keep their noses out of other people's business. Because these two actors should have been talking for a long time. And when they were negotiating, when they were talking, what did this clown and the American clown did? They attacked them. Because supposedly they were developing a nuclear weapon. Well, I will tell you this. If they had a nuclear weapon, these guys that also have a nuclear weapon would not have attacked them. And this is the situation that we have. I decided to make this little video just to explain a couple of things. I'm sorry that I was superficial in many parts of my explanation, but I was not. I was just trying to give you an overall look on everything, so that we understand what is in cause here, what is in the gambling table of the world here, and to tell you that we need a compromise. The only way to solve this is by compromising. This means no one wins, no one loses. This means Israel goes back to the negotiating table with the Palestinians and with Iran and with Lebanon and even with Syria. And they decide how they are going to do this. You could do something as simple as this, as ask for a UN Peace Corps to monitor the borders. You would ask for the terrorist for Hezbollah to either become just a political party and end the terrorist attacks and settle and then Israel could begin to rebuild connections with other countries because Israel needs this. For its future, Israel needs to have connections with the other countries in the region. It needs to be a part of the region where the country is. Israel plays football in the European League. They don't play they don't play in the local leagues. They participate in the Eurovision. They are completely disconnected from the area where they live. And this cannot go on. This isn't look, this is an unsustainable situation. This is like having a penguin living in the middle of the Sahara Desert inside of a fridge turned up to the maximum. Do you understand what I'm trying to tell you? This is the situation. Tomorrow, today, Israel is on top. Tomorrow, it may not be. And this is what each and every citizen inside of Israel has to think about. When they go to the ballot vote and when they go to vote, this is what they have to think about. And they also have to think about the hate speech and how oddly similar it is to the speech of the Nazis and of other extremists in history towards Palestinians. They approved a law that is basically apartheid right now for them to legally execute Palestinians. Do you think this is a good idea? What Israel needs to do is go back to the negotiating table, okay, and deal with this situation. Give the Palestinians their land, man. Right, put a wall around Gaza to your border. I don't care. Do whatever you want, but leave them alone because you can win now. Look, Israel right now, they bulldoze all over their neighbors. They do whatever they want. In a decade, I don't know, in 100 years, in 5 years, in 10 minutes, I don't know, their neighbors bulldoze into them. And we have this endless situation. You cannot live this way. No one can live. No one can live this way. And if the lunatic attacks this one, right now we are looking at 2 years of crisis because of this. If they invade, I don't think I will be alive when the crisis ends. This is the situation that we have. And how many people will die for this island? Or maybe he won't invade this island. I don't know. Maybe he will stage an invasion right here. You have important cities here. You have one of the because in Iran you have some cities that are capitals, so to speak. You have Tehran, you have Isfahan, and you have Shiraz here. These are the three more important cities in Iran. Maybe I don't know, perhaps he will try to stage an invasion and occupy Shiraz to occupy the entire southern region of Iran. Look at this. These are just mountains. These are just traps. Because it wouldn't make much sense for him to invade, for example, or maybe come via Iraq and try to occupy Isfahan. Occupying Tehran, I don't know if it would mean anything right now, to be honest. Or maybe stage an attack on the three capitals all at once. Whatever he's planning to do, it's ridiculous. It's First of all, it's something that should not be done. And secondly, it's useless. And then he tells us, oh, you can go to the Gulf right now because go get your oil or grow some spine and go get your oil. After he has done all of this shit. And here we are. Well, folks, this video has gone long enough, really long. I'm sorry for my long rant, but today I decided to I even had to bring a history book. I decided to give a small recap of all of these situations that we have to consider and that we have to deconstruct many myths that are that people are considering to be truth. Okay, stop stop letting yourselves be guided by emotions and religion because it will lead to nothing. Whatever religion you have, I respect it, but don't let it rule your entire life. Okay, and let us hope, pray, if you are a believer in any religion, that this invasion doesn't go forward because it will be a bloodbath. It's already a bloodbath. So many people have died, including those children in that school. And no kid deserves that. Whatever religion or shade of melanin it has. No kid deserves that. Okay, folks, thank you all for listening to my little video. And